Geek World!
Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Geek World Radio. So it's Halloween, and for Halloween we decided to do something very special. We are talking about some of our favorite horror comedies. Now, some of these movies are ones that you may have never heard of, other ones you might have heard of but probably haven't seen. But some of the things, like the directors of these movies, might surprise you.
Totally anime. So we're not talking about like Evil Dead. We're not talking about Shaun the Dead. We're not talking about like those bigger ones. We're talking about ones that maybe you haven't seen yet. So, number one, this is actually one of my favorites and probably the one that is least known to most people. 1981's Student Bodies.
Yes.
Now, we saw this movie a few years ago, and I think the first thing that we came to realize was this is the original scary movie.
Yeah, very much so. I mean, this is more of a slasher film.
Yep, it's a parody of the slasher films that were coming out in the late 70s and early 80s. Things like Halloween, things like Carrie, things like Prom Night.
Yeah, and it's done from the perspective of the killer, a lot of it, you know? Some of it's done from, normal perspective, but there's a lot done from the perspective of the heavy-breathing killer.
It wasn't that first-person perspective, just like the first Friday the 13th movie. And it's just super funny. I mean, Malvert. Come on. Malvert is amazing. One of the funniest characters of film history.
Horsehead bookends, people.
Yeah.
Horsehead bookends.
Perhaps man's highest cultural achievement is the horsehead bookend.
It's the best. And basically this breather character is killing all of these people in this high school, right? And he's using all kinds of weird stuff like paper clips and chalkboard erasers. He's putting guys in trash bags until they die. It's totally funny, totally weird, and totally worth it. You gotta check it out if you get the chance.
Yeah, and one of the great things about it is you'll watch it and you'll be like, oh my god, that joke was used in Scary Movie.
Yeah.
That joke was used in this. That joke was used in that. Because a lot of the stuff is so funny that it really was taken for other things. One of the other great things is that really nobody in the movie is known at all.
Yeah.
And so it just has that really fun feel to it when you don't know anybody in a movie.
Totally. One more thing about Student Bodies anime, this is an interesting factoid. Mickey Rose is the guy that has the credit for directing the film. He was an early collaborator with Woody Allen. But in actuality, he was only the co-director. So there's another director who actually directed it, but he couldn't use his real name because of the director strike at the time.
So who is it?
His name's Michael Ritchie. Before he did Student Bodies, he did Bad News Bears, he did Fletch, he did that movie Digstown, you remember that?
Oh, yeah.
So it's really interesting. Next up anime
Yes.
is Return of the Living Dead.
This is one of my favorites. Now, it's done sort of like a sequel to Night of the Living Dead, and there's a reason that I say sort of.
So true, anime. So John A. Russo, the guy who wrote The Night of the Living Dead, after The Night of the Living Dead, he and George Romero, they parted ways. And essentially, they both took parts of the title that they could make movies with. John A. Russo got Living Dead, and Romero got, like, just The Dead. Right? And so George A. Romero went on to do like Dawn of the Dead, Day of the Dead, and John Russo ended up writing this Return of the Living Dead. So basically John A. Russo wrote this story. They ended up hiring Dan O'Bannon to direct it. Now, this was one of the first movies he directed, but he wrote some movies you might have heard of, like Alien. He wrote some segments of Heavy Metal. He wrote Life Force.
Wow.
And he also wrote Total Recall.
Oh, nice.
So this guy is pretty awesome. So how this movie starts off, it's sort of a fun parody of Night of the Living Dead almost, okay? So it starts off with this container being sent to this medical supply warehouse, right? And basically it's like a do not open scenario. And the guy who brings it basically says to the kid,
You see that movie, Night of the Living Dead?
well, that was actually based on a real thing that happened. This military experiment gone wrong, and what's in this container is actually the remnants of that, so don't touch it. But of course, the kid let the gas come out of the containment unit.
Yeah, well, if you're told not to touch it, you're going to touch it. It's the big red button scenario.
Exactly. And then a corpse was reanimated, and then wackiness ensues.
I mean, you've got characters with names like Trash.
And Spider.
Casey.
And Scuzz.
How did Casey get in there?
I don't know. This is the thing. This is what's really interesting. This movie actually does have a very interesting place in zombie canon. Do you know what that is?
I do know what that is.
What is it?
Before that movie, you didn't have zombies that were asking for brains. This is where that came from. It came from Return of the Living Dead.
Yes.
And from then on, I mean, people always just assume zombies are after brains, which they never seem to actually be after. It's always like guts and stuff.
It's flesh, yeah, exactly. It was because of this movie. It's awesome. You guys have to check out Return of the Living Dead. Okay, anime, next up is Dead Alive, or, as it was known in New Zealand, Brain Dead.
Dead Alive is a great one.
Yes. Now, do you remember who directed this?
Peter Jackson.
Exactly. This is one of his first movies. He had done a few before this, but essentially Peter Jackson directed this amazing, completely insanely gory movie.
Yeah.
Essentially, it was written by him and Fran Walsh, of course, his wife Fran Walsh, and Stephen Sinclair. Actually, Stephen Sinclair also ended up helping them write Lord of the Rings: Two Towers. So there you go. Power trios. Still going strong. But this movie is nothing short of amazing.
Yeah.
I don't even know how they did everything they did. The gore is so good. The directing is so good. And you can see how Peter Jackson became Mr. Lord of the Rings, Mr. Hobbit, Mr. King Kong.
Yeah, I mean, he's so great at doing practical effects. You know, he doesn't need CGI to do great effects. And this is one of those movies that really shows you that.
But it was probably after this movie he was like, maybe I should create a CGI company and call it Weta. And then they can be like the most amazing thing ever and do special effects for all my movies and someday a Superman movie.
Yeah.
Probably exactly what went through his head.
That was. I mean, you know, I was there in his brain at the time.
What's weird about this movie, it's actually a period piece, which I never remember. But
well, you don't
essentially,
think of it like that.
No, but it's based in 1957. It's about this sort of sad sack who lives with his domineering mother, but then there is a Sumatran rat monkey.
Of course there is.
Bites her, she
don't
becomes
they go to
a zombie.
the zoo? Like, they take their mother to the zoo
or
something?
Yeah, he takes his mother to the zoo, and that's how she gets bitten by the rat monkey.
Right.
And then from there, everyone becomes a zombie. There's a bunch of funny little hijink moments, like that moment where the zombie baby and him in the park, which is like one of the funniest scenes of all time. But at the end, he kills all of these zombies in his house with a freaking lawnmower.
Well, I mean, that is your best weapon against zombies. Why don't more things use lawnmowers against zombies? Seriously?
I swear that, like, the Dead Rising video games would not exist without this movie.
Seriously?
The whole thing with him and the lawnmower is like a total something from Dead Rising.
Mm-hmm.
Either way, if you guys haven't seen this movie, you have to see it, especially if you love Peter Jackson. It's not for the squeamish. It's super gross. We're not even showing you the grossest things because it would be way too much. It is insanely gross, but it's totally worth it. It's so much fun.
And a lot of the gross is kind of hilarious.
Yeah, but it's
in
like,
context.
But it's like just well enough made that it's like, ugh.
Right.
All right, anime.
What's next, Dave?
Next up is the totally amazing Slither.
Oh my god, Slither. Okay, yeah. Slither is done by James Gunn. You might recognize the name James Gunn because we've actually brought it up on this show a lot lately.
Yeah.
He is the guy that's directing Guardians of the Galaxy for Marvel.
Yeah, James Gunn is amazing. He also made Super, and he was also the writer of the Scooby-Doo movies and the Dawn of the Dead remake.
Now, this movie, it stars Michael Rooker, it's got Nathan Fillion, it's got Elizabeth Banks. Yeah, it has an amazing cast of awesome, fun, geeky people.
Now, Slither's amazing. It's really a throwback to those sort of late 70s horror movies that were really gory, really outlandish. And I gotta be honest, I've only been able to watch it once, because it's so gross.
So what happens is this meteorite crashes down and it infects Michael Rooker with these parasitic slugs, and all this gross stuff happens, like he impregnates this woman, so she's got the slugs inside her, and oh god, it's so gross from there. I can't, it's because she's like impregnated with all these
millions of them. Yeah.
I can't even go into how nasty it gets.
It's so gross.
Awful.
Yeah, I mean, James Gunn is a really interesting guy, because he's a great filmmaker and a great writer, but he also comes from Troma. That's where he learned how to make movies. Actually, if you guys want to check out this link I'm putting down right here, it's our interview with James Gunn that was from a few years ago, where he talks about starting off at Troma. He talks about Slither. You should check it out. But the thing is, this movie is super gross, but it's super awesome. Don't watch it while eating. Don't watch it before, after eating. And prepare to not eat a day after.
But, you know, at least it's got humor in it, so, like, that counterbalances the gross, right?
Totally! And if you're on one of those, like, 3-day cleanses, that's the perfect movie to watch.
Good call.
Yeah, there you go. I'm looking out for you guys.
Totally.
Don't worry. Next up is a foreign film.
Ooh.
From Norway.
Nice.
What is it, anime?
It is Dodd Snow.
Also known as?
Dead Snow.
Exactly. This movie is crazy. Anime, why don't you tell the folks about it?
Okay, so this is a movie that really asks the question, what's worse than zombies? You know what's worse than zombies? Nazi zombies.
So true.
Yeah, so in the snowy hills of Norway, there's a group of kids, and they're all like, "Ooh, we're on vacation," but they find this gold. They're like, "Ooh, gold! What a perfect vacation!" So they're like, "Let's take the gold." Well, you don't do that. You want to know why? Because that is Nazi gold.
It is Nazi gold, and they are bad.
And they are not just bad, but they are still protecting that gold, even in death.
Exactly. Now, it's actually funny because if you're not Scandinavian, if you're not from that area, you wouldn't know, but there's folklore involved in that area of these monsters called Drugar that are essentially these corpses that are buried and they live with their treasure and they become reanimated if you try to steal their treasure.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of an interesting other layer, and that's sort of how they're zombies. They're more like mystical zombies.
Yep.
They're essentially those characters that you'd fight in the dungeons in Skyrim.
Yeah,
You know?
totally.
But basically this movie's unbelievable. It definitely is a pastiche to things like The Evil Dead, Dead Alive. I believe they bring up Evil Dead.
Yeah, one of the characters makes a lot of references to other kind of horror movies.
It's super violent, but also super fun. I mean, it's like really an amazing movie to watch.
And one of the other great things about it is that even though it's in a foreign language and you're reading subtitles, you still get the humor of it. You still get the fun of it. And you still get that they're making fun of those movies, that they're not trying to take themselves super seriously.
Fortune and glory, kid.
And the guy that directed it went on to direct Hansel and Gretel Witch Hunters, which everyone saw.
Wow, you really killed it there, Anime. Everyone was right about to see Dodd Snow. You know what? Hopefully the footage we show during this segment will at least get them to see it.
Hey, whatever. Dodd Snow was awesome.
Totally awesome. But Anime, that's it.
That is it.
We got through a list. Like we said, guys, this is stuff you might not have already seen. That's why we didn't bring up, Evil Dead. That's why we didn't bring up Shaun of the Dead. There are a ton of great horror comedies out there that you've probably already seen. But this list, these are for the ones that if you haven't seen them, you really should.
Yeah.
And then you should go make yourself some horsehead bookends.
You should. And guys, if you have any other horror comedies that you think most people haven't seen, let us know in the comments down below.
Definitely. Either way, guys, if you want to listen to us on the radio, we're on every week on Indie 100 and The Point.
And if you want to get in touch with us, you can send us an email to geekworldradio@yahoo.com, and be sure to check out our website, geekworldradio.com.
Radio? During horsehead bookends? Bye.
On Geek World Radio.